Welcome to my channel, and if you're new here, welcome. My name is Eda. I'm a poultry farmer, and today we'll be discussing chicken farming for beginners, and I'll take you step by step. As for today, this is my third and a half, let's say like that, in this poultry farming business. And today I'll be giving the guide according to my own experience, what I've experienced so far. And first thing first, the number one rule is you should start small and grow big. It's very important to begin with a manageable number of birds so that we can be able to understand their needs. Before we scale to large-scale farming, very important we learn before we expand. And in this case, you'll find that most of the people who start in large scale with no idea, they end up incurring a lot of losses because they didn't have enough knowledge when it comes to this poultry farming business. And as much as you see a poultry farming business as an easy job, it's not an easy job. Actually, chicken are so sensitive animals, they're very sensitive. And if you make one mistake, that's it. So it's very, very important so that we can be able to have this knowledge. We start small and grow big. After you've learned how to manage this chicken, you can be able to expand. So another thing is it's very important to, before anything else, now you have that idea, you decide if you want to venture into broilers or layers or dual purpose chicken. This is according to the market of your area. There's no need to start something because other people are doing it and you don't know where they are selling their products to. So before you start, it's very, very important to do research and know what is going to do well according to you and according to your market. Don't do something because another person is doing it. It's very, very important. And another thing is very important to have a budget. Know the costs for chicks, feeders, drinkers, and vaccination, medication, because sometimes these chicks get sick and you'll need to buy medicine, and some of the medicines, they're very, very expensive. Have a budget for quality feeds, which these one constitute about 70% of production costs. So feeds take a lot of money. So if you've decided the number of birds you want to have, make sure you have enough budgeting for the feeds. They really take a lot of money when starting up, but later, like if your farm is doing well, the chicken are going to be able to buy the feeds for themselves after they start laying. It's very important to, when you're making the structure, make sure the structure is clean and dry, because when it's wet, it brings some diseases. And also make sure the ventilation of the house is according to the standard. And make sure when you're searching for a location for your chicken, for your poultry farm houses, make sure it's a place with water, clean water, and electricity. We know that there are some diseases brought about by dirty water, e.g. E. coli, salmonella. So it's very important to make sure the location of your poultry house has clean water, and electricity is for brooding. The first few days you have to put light on. And don't, in the structure, make sure the standard that you're not going to overcrowd your birds, because overcrowding your birds, you won't be able to see or notice when your birds are sick because they are squeezed to each other. It's supposed to be 3 to 4 chicken per square meter. So make sure when you are constructing your poultry house, you're constructing it accordingly. Make sure you have the feeding knowledge of the chicken. When immediately they come into your farm, what is required, which food is required. Like the first 6 weeks, you need chick mash. Then after chick mash, you need grower mash. Then after grower mash, you need pre-layers. Then after pre-layers, you need layers. When giving water, sometimes you can also add supplements like vitamins. Vitamin is very, very important in chicken production. Mostly if they are laying birds, So make sure you give supplements. Another thing is health and vaccination. Don't miss any vaccines from day 7. Actually, most of the chicks, they are usually vaccinated from the hatchery. But after 7 days, you'll start vaccinating. So make sure you give the Newcastle, Gumboro, Fowlpox, fall typhoid. Make sure you know all those vaccines and when you are required to give the chicks. Because if you miss any of those vaccinations and there is an outbreak of something, mostly Newcastle, it's a very contagious disease. Most of the time you'll find that you might lose all your birds, and to avoid that, make sure you vaccinate your birds. Vaccination is very, very important. And make sure you know the dairy management, cleaning the feeders, mostly for chicks. This one is for chicks because actually chicks, they're very sensitive. Raising chicks is the easiest to work in poultry farming business, but also it's the hardest part of poultry farming business, because if you make one mistake, you are going to incur a lot of losses. So make sure you know those dairy management, cleaning the feeders and the drinkers. When they start laying eggs, make sure you know the correct time for collecting eggs, because sometimes like rats, they'll start coming, or snake, they start coming and taking the eggs. So to avoid all this, and you know sometimes chicken, like there's that egg without very strong shell, you'll find that they eat those eggs, and this one encourages them to eat eggs more. So to avoid all that, it's not the correct time to start collecting your eggs. Observation is very, very important. Make sure you go to your coop and observe if you have sick birds, so that you can be able to isolate them. Security is something very, very important when you start your poultry farming business. Make sure you implement very strict biosecurity, mostly as a beginner, or not even as a beginner. If you have a farm, it's biosecurity mostly for poultry farming is very, very important to control the spread of diseases. Make sure you have a foot dip at the entrance. It's also very important to keep the litter all the time dry to avoid diseases. As I said earlier, this wet litter has ammonia, which makes the chicken have respiratory diseases. So to avoid that, make sure your litter is always dry. And you know, most of the common mistakes beginners do make is overcrowding. You'll find that most of the people, they don't have the knowledge for spacing, like I was a victim. And also poor feeding, enough. So like if you have 50 birds, it's very, very important to know the amount of feed they're supposed to take. Also, another thing is a skipped vaccination schedule. You should never skip any vaccine. And most people, they assume just because the chicken have been vaccinated from the hatchery that you should not repeat the vaccination schedule. You should repeat. Because you know those chicken, they are many, like they were vaccinating the hatchery 1,000 chicks. Sometimes it's not that effective because some will miss that vaccination. That's why we repeat the vaccination at the farm. Another mistake is no record keeping. You'll find that if you're not keeping record in your farm, you won't know how your farm is progressing. And this is like, sometimes you might be thinking that you're not having any profit in your farm, but actually that's not the thing. You're having profit, but some of the profit tips I'm going to share with you is make sure all the time you're buying your chicken feeds, it's quality. And it's very important you make sure you reduce feed wastage, make sure there's no wastage. And it's also very important you sell your eggs locally. And at the end of the day, you start small and you grow big slowly. Thank you.